Welcome back to the Leather Shop. I'm your host, Matt Roach, and this month we have Daniel Skinner from Skinner American Goods. Dan, thanks for hopping on this month. I'm excited to have you.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
So, Dan, for anybody who doesn't know, his stuff interests me because not only is he a leather maker, but he's also a denim maker and just a clothing designer, which I think is really kind of a cool mix to have those things. And I think I always find it interesting that people have multiple facets or skill sets in their arsenal. I think, we had Brian from Rowan and Weiss who could do cabinetry and that. And it's kind of interesting to see how the two bounce off of each other. So, Dan, thanks for hopping on and tell us a little bit about your journey. How did Skinner American Goods kind of come to exist?
Yeah, so I was in college for computer science and wasn't really happy with that and started, I've always kind of been a tinkerer, so I've always had like little side projects going on and was in a thrift shop and saw an old Singer sewing machine and it was like 25 bucks and I picked it up, thought thought it might be something cool to kind of play around with and yeah, took it home, started learning how to make stuff and it just kind of spiraled into a business or spiraled into a hobby and then a business. So, at a certain point I was essentially skipping school to stay home and work on learning how to make jeans and stuff and decided that it was kind of a waste of money to keep doing that. And so went to work full time and started saving up all the money that I needed to be able to buy like the proper equipment and stuff like that. And to kind of bootstrap my way into it.
Yeah, denim is definitely one of those things where it requires an awful lot of machines. You have
Yeah.
so many machines at your shop, and I can see them on the background too. How many sewing machines do you have, or just machines in general?
For production, we use 11, I think. It's always changing because I'm constantly buying and selling machines. That's another little side project that I like to do. So at any given point, I'll have different machines, but that doesn't count the probably 10 to 12 that are sitting in my garage waiting for repair and restoration. And then I've got 5 or 6 around the store, just kind of as display pieces. So we're probably getting close to 30 at this point.
So you have not only an addiction, but a ton of knowledge because you are one of the people I always pick your brain because whenever I have sewing machine issues, you somehow know how to fix it. How did you come to have that kind of knowledge? Because you just seem to always know how to fix machines, which is super impressive.
Lots and lots of late nights yelling and screaming at machines. And yeah, just lots of trial and error and kind of, YouTube videos and asking people who are on Instagram who, buy and sell machines for a living or whatever. It's really just about sort of figuring stuff out on your own. And unfortunately, we've lost a lot of really good sewing machine mechanics as factories kind of shifted overseas. Those people that were working 40, 50 years ago in factories as mechanics are starting to die and there's nobody coming up through the ranks after them. So there's kind of a lack of knowledge around that sort of thing. So it's surprisingly difficult to find knowledge on specific machines that we use, like my buttonhole machine, for instance. I mean, they're they're notoriously difficult to work on and to keep running. And there's also like nobody out there who knows how to do it. So it's really just trial and error and figuring it out as you go.
It's funny you say that because now that you mention it, every time I see a kind of a sewing machine shop or one of those like small tailor slash, fix it places, they always seem extremely old and kind of like a time warp. You don't really see anybody going into it. Is it because it's just not lucrative anymore? And it was as a field, it was something that was really advantageous while work and production was in the States? Or is it you think something that there's just not as much interest in now in terms of just getting people that are doing machines or, you know, repair work?
Probably a little bit of both. So a lot of the sewing machine stores that you see now, they really cater to like domestic sewing machines. So something that you're going to use at home.
Yeah.
You know, factories typically they either employ or they'll contract with a sewing machine mechanic. So most factories will have 3 or 4 guys on hand at any time because they've got, you know, 800 machines running. So one of them is always down or always needs adjustments, or they're getting it set up for a new run of products or whatever. Yeah. I mean, as we all know, those factories are few and far between nowadays. And so it's a combination of that. People generally don't sew as much as they do or as much as they did back in the day. You know, it's not really taught in schools anymore and that sort of thing. So a lot of people on the domestic side, there's just not the demand for it. And, you know, if you think about people sewing nowadays at home, it's generally kind of an older group.
Yeah,
And
or they're
yes,
using small singers too. I think the main difference too is when you get into leather, denims, different fabrics, you can't necessarily always use the home singers. They can't cut it. Those engines are not meant to do not only the everyday wear and tear, but also their motions aren't strong enough to go through a lot of leathers. That's just not what they're made for. They're meant for very thin flannels and cottons and things like that, linens that are very easy to go through and you can almost push through with your finger.
yeah,
So that's the other thing too, is it also is a different skill set too to understand those machines. You know, you have all industrial machines and understand those. Did you find a big change? Did you ever use domestic, like home machines, the small stuff you could keep on your countertop?
yeah, I did. But I started with the vintage ones and, you
Yeah.
know, newer sort of plastic machines. A lot of them have plastic gears or at least like non-hardened steel gears. But if you buy like a vintage Singer 201, for instance, that's an old domestic machine from like the 30s to the 60s. I mean, those things, you know, they're not going to go through the kind of denim that I'm using
Yeah.
without some modification or adjustment to the timing. But I mean, you can get a lot done. You know, you can sew a canvas bag with those, but they don't have all the bells and whistles, right? So new
Yeah.
modern machines, a lot of them have 20 different stitches, 30 different stitches. They're computerized. You can do like embroidery on a bunch of the modern machines and stuff. So they do a little bit of everything, but they don't do anything particularly well. Whereas
Yeah.
an older straight stitch machine or an industrial machine is basically built to do one very specific thing. So like in our shop, we have a machine that just puts on the waistband, a machine that just makes belt loops, a machine that just hems jeans, one that just does the bar tack, which is the reinforcement, the kind of zigzag stitch that you'll see holding on like pockets or belt loops. So they're all purpose built for one very specific task, and that's all that they do. And they do it better than anything else. So there's really a difference between, you know, it's having the right tool for the right job kind of thing.
Now, are any of those universal? You know, how they said they can do like the zigzag stitch. Can they do other things? Like, say you didn't need to do a zigzag stitch anymore. Or are they really just tailored to doing that one thing really, really well? And that's kind of it.
There's a little bit of flexibility. So like my main workhorse machine is a straight stitch industrial machine. So you can sew any kind of straight seam. So when we're closing up the inseams, the out seam, stitching the pockets, it does all of that stuff.
Okay.
But it isn't going to do like a zigzag stitch. It's not going to make a buttonhole. You know, so there are purpose built machines that literally do one specific thing. Like my buttonhole machine, you literally cannot sew anything other than a buttonhole on it. That's all it's made for.
Right.
Whereas my belt loop machine, you know, that that can be used it can be converted to do cover stitching for t-shirts. You could use it for like other types of knit fabrics and stuff like that. So it really depends on the machine, but generally they're either very specifically purpose built or they can cover a slight range of operations depending like on the parts that you switch out or the way you have them set up.
So for you, when you were switching between denim and leather, did you have to recalibrate them in between? Did you have it specifically dialed in for denim or leather, or was it kind of just once you have it working the way you like it, those machines can kind of adapt as you go to the different kinds of fabric, whether you're doing waxed canvas to denim to leather. Did they kind of all work the same, or did you have to really kind of dial it in for the specific thing you were using it for?
Well, I've got a specific like leather machine. So I learned leather goods after I was already making jeans. So I went to work for a company that was making leather goods, and I was doing production management for them and also a little bit of design work and stuff. So I kind of learned that on the job, but they hired me because I already knew how to make jeans and was already kind of, so I already had a bunch of industrial equipment and stuff. So it was an easy transition to learn, going from the garment world to the leather world. It wasn't that much different. So I had the luxury of learning on a Cobra Class 4. We had like 3 or 4 of those, and we had a bell skiver, and we had, a lot of people learn leather goods and they start out with hand tools and, saving up for that class 26 or Texo or whatever. And I was fortunate enough to learn with the best tools that you could get kind of right off the bat. So yeah, I didn't have to learn to switch over anything because I was kind of doing things. I was working the day job doing leather goods and then coming home and working in the garage on jeans at night. So generally, like I could sew some pretty lightweight leather. I could probably get through 6 to 8 ounces of leather on my straight stitch machine if I really wanted to. It's not really made for that, but you can kind of push it a little bit, if you have a leather needle and stuff. So there is some crossover, but not a ton. You really need a specific leather machine or a specific garment machine, unless you're working with like garment leathers that are, 2 to 3 ounces, super, super soft.
Yeah. I do find that there is a universality to like certain machines. So like I have the 26 and I find that it does do a decent job at being a flatbed with the attachment. Is it perfect? No, it's not a flatbed, but it's also not sold as a flatbed. It's trying to find a way to make it two different products in one, which is it does a great job at making a two in one. If you don't have the room or you can't afford two machines, it makes sense. So in your shop, you're dedicated when you just use the class 4, and is that the one that you have in your shop, or is that what you
No,
learned on?
I've got a FAT 33, was it 335? Yeah, the one that's set up for like binding and stuff.
Yeah, it's a cylinder arm, right? Or no, that's not a cylinder arm. That's a
Yeah, it is.
oh, it is a cylinder arm.
It's a cylinder arm, yeah. So I've got it set up right now with a flat foot and a flat plate and a flat feed dog. So right now it's set up for like small leather goods wallets and stuff like that. When I got it, it had a binding attachment on it,
Oh,
but I
that's
still have
awesome.
those parts. So whenever I need to do a run of like canvas bags or whatever, I'll just switch out the foot and the feed dog and all of that and kind of run it as a binder. And then I can switch the parts back and forth. It's, just a couple of screws. It's not that complicated to switch them out. So
Is yours one of the newer ones that kind of? I know I saw one somewhat recently. Don't they have the electronic kind of like the little screens on the corners or something like that, where like you can kind of like really dial it in on the side? Some of the FAFs I saw have that kind of that adjustable thing, kind of like they have on the Cobras, things like the motor thing on the bottom, but theirs is
yeah,
like a little like LCD screen that has seems like seamless endless options. I
yeah.
didn't look
Oh,
too like in depth on it, but it seemed pretty crazy.
yeah. Mine doesn't have that. A lot of the newer machines that you'll find in factories will have sort of computer controlled, automatic needle positioning, automatic thread trimming, automatic foot
Thread
joint.
trimming. Oh, that changes the
Yeah,
game.
yeah,
That's a thing?
yeah. Like my main workhorse straight stitch machine has automatic thread trimming. You can set
That's
it up to
amazing.
do you can set it up to do like specific patterns or a specific number of stitches. So for instance, if your back pocket from the top down to the first kind of pivot point is like 30 stitches, you can set it up to only do 30 stitches. So you can zip it through and it'll automatically stop where it needs to stop. And then you can pivot it. And I mean, there's so much technology out there now. One of my sort of dream machines is a Juki 9000C that they just came out with last year, or the year before. and it has automatic thread tension, automatic foot tension. So as you're sewing, it is constantly adjusting thread tension based on the thickness of the fabric that you're sewing, and also automatically adjusting the foot pressure. So
Wait,
as you're
holy
going from
crap.
like, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. And it also has a thread trimming, back tacking, automatic needle position, and you can actually load that profile. So if you're a designer, let's say if I was going to go get my products produced in a factory, I can dial in the settings on my machine, send the settings file over to the factory. They can load that on their machines and have everything set up exactly the way that I wanted in terms of thread tension and stitch length and all of that stuff. And
So
so
do you
it's,
think like technology's really starting to make its way into, because I think for the longest time, I didn't think there really was much technology in the, what I'll call the entry level, mid to entry level commercial products of industrial machines. So things that like your Texos, your entry level Jukis, your Cobras, your things like that, your fast, like your very entry level machines where they're still expensive. They could be upwards of $5,000, $6,000, but I assumed that technology was making its way into the 10 to 20 to $30,000 machines that are being used in massive factories.
yeah,
But it seems like it's kind of making its way down. Is that kind of what you are seeing? That it's now people are starting to get more technology in those machines?
yeah, definitely in the domestic machine world, they've had like LCD screens and computer controlled stuff for quite a while.
Yeah,
The
that stuff's
industrial,
different though. I mean, I feel like you can't
yeah,
even
yeah,
really compare the stuff that you have in your house. They're almost like apples and oranges type things.
yeah.
But
The,
they do have some cool screens. And they have 9,000 stitches you could add. Like it's crazy the
yeah,
amount of options they
yeah,
have.
yeah.
Uh,
We have seen a lot of that in the last 10 years. So the thing about industrial machines is they're made to last for 40 or 50 years. Like most of my machines, with the exception of my kind of main workhorse machine that's computerized. I mean, the oldest machine that I have in the shop right now is like from the late 20s and it's still running, still working. So a lot of the times, that the industrial machines are going to be 20, 30, 40 years behind because they last so long. There's no
yeah,
need to upgrade them. You know, from a factory standpoint, you're not going to buy 50 new machines when the ones that you have still work, right? And
100%. Yeah, it's a
it's
learned
also
skill
hard
too.
to, yeah, yeah. So yeah, but we are starting to see a lot of that technology and the prices are coming down. So like that machine that I was talking about with all the automatic stuff is, I want to say they're like $3,500. So they're really not that expensive,
Yeah,
compared
I'm
to
actually
a
looking at it. They
Cobra
look
class
really affordable.
26. Yeah. Yeah. And there's different levels, the top of the line one, I think tops out at 37, maybe 4,000. But if you're a clothing designer and you're not specifically doing heavy stuff like denim, you know, I mean, for $4,000, you could get a machine that does anything you will need it to do, in terms of a designer. The reason that we have so many machines is just because we're in production mode, right? So we want to make things as efficient as possible. But if you're just doing one-off garments to send out for production, that machine will get you pretty much everything you need to do.
Yeah, and I agree. Like, I think the one thing you said that I really resonate with is the fact that they will last forever. When I like got my class 26 here, which first of all, it's my first ever like true industrial machine that got developed on shipped on a flatbed.
Yeah.
So for me, I will say I've never seen any place ship something with the amount of care and description that they did at Leather Machine Co. I even sent pictures to them. I was like, I've never seen anything like this. They wrapped
Yeah.
it so like perfect. They had everything individually wrapped, labeled, double labeled, triple tape. And this thing will outlive me. It's
Yeah.
so, and in this day and age, the thing I find so remarkable is it's very easily repairable. If one piece breaks, it's just a unscrew and buy a new part and put it right back in. There's
Yeah.
nothing in the day and age that we live in where things just get thrown away because they're just cheap and easy. I've seen that at least this commercial machine is very easy to repair. It's just a rinse, repeat. Your motor goes, all right, a couple $100, you're back in stock and you don't have to change your whole new machine. So for an investment standpoint, it makes way more sense to invest in a quality machine because you'll never have to worry about it breaking.
Yeah.
It's never gonna. That's why people probably have machines that are 100 years old because it's very easy to. It's like an old car.
Yep.
A
Yeah.
carburetor
For sure.
goes in a 67. You know exactly what to put in. There's no electronics. There is some electronics, but it's very minimal.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
you can just rinse and repeat. Take it out, throw it right back in.
Yeah. Yeah. I like the car analogy because I tell people that all the time. They're like, why are you constantly buying and selling machines? I'm like, well, because there are certain models that I've fallen in love with that I've never had before.
Yeah.
And, I nerd out with my online like sewing machine friend about specific models and the intricacies between them in the same way that like a Mustang guy is going to tell you about the Mach 3 and the difference between, the 67 Chevelle versus,
Yeah.
it's just like, it's the same exact thing when we all kind of get together
It's
and
their
talk
white
about cars
whale.
and stuff.
It's the thing
Yeah.
where they're like, I need to get it. That's the white whale.
Yep. Exactly.
And it's true. Those machines, they'll last forever. And I wish I had your space to like get many machines because also I wish I lived closer because I think I would spend way too much time at your shop. And I would have a bell skyver right now if I lived closer to Florida because there is no
Yeah.
doubt in my mind I would have bought that off you. And the fact of getting that from Florida up to Boston pretty much would have been impossible. So
Yeah.
I
I
do.
mean,
And it
at
would have
that
cost
point,
more in shipping. You know what I mean? It would have been like
exactly. Yeah.
$500 in shipping.
Yep. Yeah. At
And who
that
knows
point, you
how
could
it
have just
shows
bought a
up.
new one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is sad because also if I didn't have kids, I would have just drove down. But the
Yeah.
fact of a full week of just driving seems
Yeah.
exhausting because it would
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
take me 3 days down,
Yeah. How far are you from Rhode Island?
about an hour less.
Because I'll be up there later in the summer. We'll have to talk about that later.
Mhm.
But
All right, now the plot thickens. All right, yeah. Maybe are you driving or are you flying?
we're flying.
Oh, okay. Oh, I can come and hang out for the day.
Yeah. My wife's best
Yes.
friend moved up there. So we're
Oh
gonna go
yeah,
visit.
no, Rhode Island's awesome. I actually lived down there for a little bit when I was in college. I lived at
Sure.
I lived on like a hole in the wall beach house. It probably
Nice.
should have been condemned, but that's the only way you could afford to live down there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
For
we'll
sure.
have to chat about that after. Now that's great. Too bad we can't throw a machine on the airplane. They'll allow that, right? Like a 500-pound machine. That's not like against TSA rules.
Yeah. Sure. Put
You're
it in
just
the
like an
carry on.
extra heavy passenger.
Yep.
So yeah, I feel like clearly like we can nerd out about machines because I personally think anybody out there listening and you're on the fence and you know you're going to stick with this, do your research and look into machines that'll fit your need because if you actually want to do that, I think it's in hindsight, if I was going to do it all over again, I think my first purchase, well, I do think it's very valuable to learn hand stitching. I think it's an insanely valuable skill. But if you're going to buy one machine to start, I think a sewing machine is a great way to go because also affords you a lot of different options of products you can make and things you can do. And, you know, I do try to use my machine on different things and you're right about having a machine for everything because it does struggle on certain fabrics and certain thicknesses, but I do, use it on other things and it does work. It's just probably not as great as it's intended to be. If I'm going to try to do an extremely, although I did sew it on a 16-ounce belt and it did perfect, which I was extremely surprised because I assumed that was going to be, but as long as it was consistent in size going across and not, up and down, like on
Yeah.
wallets where there's
Yeah.
different like thicknesses, did fine. It had no issues, which is essentially probably what you would use a class 4 for, because a class 4, you would never really go very low in. You probably wouldn't want to go below like 6, 7 ounces, I'm assuming, because that thing's a behemoth.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I'm trying to think back, like so we were doing bags and wallets and pretty much everything, it was all chrome tan, but there were some spots like on a field notes cover where you had just that one spot. We were also running like 277 thread. So on those kinds of
Oh,
things, where you go
wow.
down to 2 layers of, you know, 4 to 5 ounce, going from 2 layers to 1 layer, we'd have to drop it down to 138 just because the knot was so big. It was, at 277, the knot like literally thicker than the 1 layer of denim or leather. So
What do you typically use if you're using like leather versus denim, per se? If we're just using those two examples, do you use a 138? Do you go lower? Like, what do you tend to use for thread?
typically it's about a Tex 80. So Tex size, and I believe the Tex size and like the 92, 138, the kind of bonded thread sizes are
Yeah.
slightly different, but they're roughly in the same ballpark.
Yeah.
Some jean companies, I mean, you can use up to a 120, 150, but you're kind of limited by what the machines are designed to
Yeah.
stitch. So certain threads that we have are, I think the thickest we have is 120, and I rarely use that, only when somebody wants like a really kind of thick wood hair stitch on the custom stuff. But if we're running normal production, yeah, Tex 80, cotton wrapped polyester. So you get the thickness, or not the thickness, the strength of polyester thread, but the feel of cotton thread, which is really nice.
Interesting. Did you ever use that on leather or did you strictly use that on denim and canvas?
Just on denim and canvas. And then for our in-store bags, wallets, that sort of thing, we're using denim mill thread. And
Yeah.
it's awesome. I like it a lot. I know you said you've had some problems with it. Okay.
You know, I haven't had major issues. I think for me, the hard thing is too, is you can get a bad spool the same way you can
Yeah.
get, and I don't buy enough thread to have like really different feelings. And I think that's the hard thing is if you're not buying a lot of it, I could have just had a bad spool. And I try not to let that kind of tarnish what the brand is. If I haven't used it enough, I don't have a bad experience with it and I still use it, but I did find it, it did knot a little bit more and it didn't move through the machine as nicely as some others, but that's not to say it's not. I use it hand stitching though. I have my 138 and I still use that hand stitching and I have no issues really with that compared to if I was using like a fil chinois or something like that, where that you have to kind of coat that with some beeswax and paraffin. Otherwise it'll just knot a ton while you're using it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the other thing. It's a time consuming thing, whether or not the type of thread you use, whether or not you want to go through all that and heating it
Yeah.
up and getting all that to give it the structure, which is kind of a pain.
Yeah.
But I am planning to try the Vimeo again with a different color because the problem is too with thread is, and I know we've mentioned this before and you've checked out the thread exchange before and they have a lot of stuff. I haven't checked it out because I find thread extremely intimidating.
Yeah.
There's way too many options and I don't know what it is, but it feels too complicated. And I don't know if that's like a weird misconception on my part, but I mean, do you think you just have a better understanding because you've been doing this for so long? So you look at thread the same way I probably look at sneakers or something like that and go, oh, yeah, yeah, you want this with this, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's some of it. It's also, part of it is knowledge, and then part of it is like just experience in terms of like I've used all sorts of different stuff. So I've used, like I said, everything from like 277 with a 26 needle, just gigantic leather
Yeah.
stitching, everything down to Tech 60 garment thread for kind of like shirts and stuff. Yeah. So I've just kind of like used it all, and, over the years and kind of figured out what I like and what I don't like. The one place in thread that I'm not super knowledgeable about, or that I don't know hardly anything about, is hand stitching, because I never really got into the hand stitching thing.
Yeah.
So that's definitely lacks some knowledge there.
I've gotten a lot better with it, and that's because of trial and error. I think I probably took the route you took with your machine thread, and I tried pretty much all of them. at this point. And there's some that I like, some that I don't like, and some of it just doesn't fit the aesthetic that I want to use either. I think a lot of people who swear by Ritza tiger thread and they love it. And for me, that's not the aesthetic I like, or it doesn't sit the way I like either, because I found it challenging to keep it to stay flat. And that could be how I use it. But yeah, I think the one thing that I find interesting with thread is how you can have the same type of thread, actual, polyester or whatever the thread is, and every company's is different, but they're all called the same thing, whether they're, what is the machine one typically? It's polyester, right?
Yeah. Either bonded nylon or bonded.
Bonded nylon. That's what I was trying to think of. Yeah. But the problem is how can they all be bonded nylon, but each one feels so different?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it has to do with like how tight the fibers are spun. It's got to do with like their finishing processes, what kind of fibers they're using and stuff. It's the same thing with cotton thread, the threads that we're using. Even certain colors are different than other colors, like the exact same brand, same line of thread, same size. Darker colors tend to be a little more flexible, not flexible, but a little softer, maybe like a little bit less stiff.
Do you think it's because of
I-
dyes? Is there certain colors that may be better because of how because I'm assuming the fabric has to be dyed. Is there a color it starts as? So maybe those ones might be softer. Like maybe they all start as white, or probably white, not as black, but
yeah.
is there certain
I,
ones that you find softer?
I don't know specifically like what causes it. I think it really just has to do with the way that it's finished or like the chemicals that they're using to dye. I mean, because nobody's using like natural, they're not indigo dyeing or whatever.
Yeah.
So they're all like either sulfur based dyes or whatever.
That would be cool though
Or
if they had
something like
indigo.
this.
If they were indigo dyed, I feel like that'd be really cool.
Yeah, they do. The supplier that I get our jeans hardware from also sells different threads, and one of them is an indigo dyed 100% cotton thread, and it's all
Man.
hand dyed. And it's like there's a ton of variation within the thread color just because it's hand dyed.
Yeah.
It's super cool, but it's very expensive. So it's
What
like,
does that run for a spool? My guess is it's got to be something like $80 a spool, $100 a spool.
I mean, so they only sell it in, I want to say 100-meter
Oh,
rolls.
that's
It's
small.
basically this one guy doing it, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, typically we're ordering like 5 to 6,000 yard spools, and those run
Yeah.
like $30-ish a piece. I've got a pretty good connection, so I can get them for around 10 plus
Oh,
shipping,
wow.
which is nice. But I'm super limited in color. So, there's only 6 or 8 colors available. But normally if you're buying a spool of that thread, it's like, yeah, 30 something dollars a comb.
It's not
But
terrible.
I don't know what the indigo dyed stuff transfers to, or, I don't know what the conversion is. I'd have to do the math on it, but it's up there. Yeah. It's not cheap. So
So essentially what I hear is you got a guy because you get some nice discounts, and
I've got a guy. Yeah. Yeah.
you gotta always have a guy,
Yeah.
if I could incorporate having a guy or a girl, it doesn't matter, into every episode I think hey, you gotta have those connections because that's where you save your
Yeah.
most money. I mean, that's the biggest savings in business is you can find the relationships that can save you money. Because think about what that probably saves you in any given year. If instead of $30 a cone, it's, $10 or 15, like that is huge savings over the course of a year.
Yeah. It all adds up. It doesn't seem like a lot at the time, $20 here or there, but yeah, definitely
Yeah.
adds up.
Especially if you go through, say, 100 cones a year or 50 cones a year, that adds up. That's extra money in your pocket.
Yeah.
But when you make, whether it's leather or jeans or, something with wax canvas, what is your favorite aspect of the process from design all the way to the finished product? What's the thing that you love the most about just creating and designing?
definitely the design side is my favorite. My dream job would be basically having people run production. I enjoy production, but it's not like where my heart is. My heart would be running the business, doing all the, marketing, photography, all that stuff, and just designing new products all day. That's really where I would want to be. Just like seeing the concept in your head and then kind of working through. I get really bored pretty easily. And so, a lot of times I'm getting bored with after I've run production on the same design, 10, 12, 15 times. I'm like, all right, this is not fun anymore. I want something like new and different. So yeah, I really just designing new stuff is my favorite part. And then also getting it out into the world and seeing customers, come back and say like their favorite pair of jeans, or hearing customers, seeing people post them online. The denim head community is really, really big on like posting on Instagram, like there's entire influencers who are just reposting people's pictures of faded jeans or whatever. And it's small in the grand scheme of things, but there's, it's definitely a culture. And yeah, so seeing people like being really receptive to the designs and the fabrics and the quality. That's, I like the very beginning part where we're designing, and I like the very end part where it gets to the customer. And then all the other stuff in between is unnecessary evil, I guess, for me.
Yeah. No, I think, I mean, I've never truly had a pair of actual, raw selvage denim fancy jeans for me. So I'm pretty excited to, eventually have my own Skinner American Good jeans. I know we are talking about this before the episode. So I'm very excited to have a pair that I know throw them in the freezer in a bag or something. That's what they tell you. I don't know. I
Yeah,
see those on
there's all
YouTube
sorts
videos
of,
once in a while.
yeah. My whole thing is they're just jeans. So you can read all sorts of crazy stuff. People like wash them in the sea. I saw
The
one guy
sea.
on,
That's crazy.
yeah, they do they do ocean washes. I saw one guy on a Facebook group was like, hey, I stayed in a hotel. My luggage got bed bugs. Should I like wash my jeans or should I try to freeze them? Will that kill the bed bugs? And we're like, dude, like these people are willing to risk getting bed bugs in their house so that they don't have to wash your jeans. And like at the end of the day, they're just jeans, right?
They're
So
it's just a
I,
pair of
I,
pants. That's
I
crazy.
try to not take you're not going to ruin them by washing them. As long as you understand that each time you wash them, you're stripping some of the life out of them. So a pair of jeans that's washed every single day is going to last a lot less time than a pair of jeans that gets washed every 2 weeks or whatever.
Stripping
So
the life out of it. So it's kind of like having like kids.
yeah,
No,
precisely.
you love, yeah,
Precisely.
you love your kids to death, but every time they do something else, you go, oh, that just stripped a little
Yep.
bit of life out of me.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. Yeah.
builds character still. They age and they get better with age. Really, they are a pair of pants.
Yeah. Yeah.
They really are just
Yeah.
raw salvage denim and leather.
Yeah. I'm going to start calling my kid denim. I actually know a guy that named his kid denim, and he's a jeans maker. So that's cool.
That poor kid, because they're going to get picked on mercilessly. I mean, not that it's a bad name. It's the
Yeah.
fact that they're going to be made fun of because their dad is a denim maker.
Yeah.
They're just, well, kids, first of all, are awful. Like teenagers, they're like, I don't even know what they are. They're like they're not even humans, teenagers. I don't know. Like they're merciless. I have seen some of them and you know what it is? I think you think you know everything, but you also, life hasn't beaten you down yet.
Yeah.
And that's the humbling thing. Like
Yep.
you need life to beat you down a little bit and be like, oh, so this is what the real world is like. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. You haven't struggled yet.
Yeah, you
Yep.
can still get away with those things and there's no real repercussions. It's like, all right, in the
Yeah.
real world, you say those things, you lose your job and you don't pay your bills and you're homeless. The end.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they seem to get away with everything. Wow, that was a tangent that I didn't see coming. Now, all right, so now I haven't lost my train of thought because we were just like down the rabbit hole of
Yeah. We were just talking about
jeans.
Washing
Uh,
and all the, yeah.
yeah. So the thing that I find interesting is, so you like the design process. Did you enjoy the design process? Did you find that there was similarities to leather and denim and canvas and things like that, where did you have to think about design differently? Or was there just a lot of similarities where they kind of all kind of blend together in terms of design?
So I think from a technical aspect of design, obviously there's differences, right? Like seam
Yeah.
allowances are different, the thickness of material, the ways that you finish the seams, all that stuff is different. But really, I think, design basically just comes down to getting a cool idea and then figuring out how to make it work in real
Yeah.
life. So it's the technical aspects are obviously different between leather and denim, but you know, the inspiration from the ideas really just kind of come out of, either seeing like something out in the wild that I want to try. Like we've done a collaboration with Rugged Workwear, who's like a pretty big denim influencer. He's a really good friend of mine. And so we've had a couple of like jackets and jeans collaborations, and the pocket design on his jacket that we did came from my daughter's raincoat. It was like a really cool pocket that
Love
was
it.
integrated into the front yoke seam. And I was like, man, it was kind of in the back of my head for a couple of years, and finally got the opportunity to design it. Of course, like we changed it up and did some different stuff with it, but because you never want to take something like exactly the way it is, but you know, inspiration can pretty much come from anywhere. So
It's funny too,
all,
because it also depends on where you live. So like I remember we were talking months ago and you were working on your jackets, and I was like, you need to make that a New England version, because it's funny, like but you design for where you live. In Florida, it's pretty much warm year round. I mean, you have winter, but it's not the same as if you lived up in New England, where it gets, brutally cold, even inside your house. It's not like you keep
yeah,
the heat at 80 degrees all the time.
right.
So it's funny, like when you see something versus like when I see something, my first initial reaction was, oh, we got to flannel this thing out. That'll be cozy as
Yeah.
heck. It's funny how those things influence how we design things. And eventually, if you ever do something with a cozy lining, I want to be that one of one guy to try it out. I want
Yeah.
to, I want
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
that first one to be the cozy jacket. But it's fascinating how you can see things and you tailor it to your local audience. Like your storefront, I'm sure isn't coming in and saying, hey, I need this heavy, heavy jacket, because sometimes you probably have mild winters where it probably doesn't get below 40 degrees, you
Yeah.
know, which is nice because 40 degrees in Massachusetts, you're out in shorts and a t-shirt
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
middle of the winter, because you're just so used to the cold. And people in
Yeah.
Boston, they're crazy. They're not normal. I I mean, they'll sit outside for brunch in January in a sweatshirt. I'm like, what are you doing? It's
Yeah.
42 degrees out. That's not, they're a different breed.
Yeah.
But, in terms of where you are now, what, so I have, a couple things I always like to ask people is, what's the best and the worst part about being a small business owner? I think I always try to help influence people to know all of the information they can if they ever do want to start their own business. Some people will always just want to be a hobby, and that's great. And you don't really need as much guidance if it's just a hobby. It's just fun. You can do it when you
Yeah.
want. But what would you say is the best and the worst parts? Because you run a retail shop too. So I think that's also a different perspective than a lot of people have, because not everybody has a retail front. They just do an online store. So
Yeah. Yeah.
how did that kind of influence how you were doing things?
Yeah. So the retail shop really came about because we moved into a space in an arts district. When I found out my first kid was going to be born, I essentially got kicked out of the spare bedroom in the house because we needed a nursery. And that's where I
Kids?
had all my, about, yeah, it's always their fault. Yeah. So that's, I had all my machine kind of packed into a 10 by 12 foot, 10 by 12 foot spare bedroom. And, we're in Tallahassee and we have this really great arts district that's essentially like old. I think it was warehouse space. It's been a rail depot. It's been a lumber yard. So in like the 70s, family bought the property and turned it into, at the time they were live-in artist studios. So they had like lofts up above, and then, the artists had their studio downstairs. Obviously living in a commercial building is a big no-no now. So you can't live here, but there's 70 something businesses here. Everything from, we've got restaurants, we do custom jeans. The store next to me is a vintage mid-century modern furniture store. We've got metal sculptors, painters. Just all sorts of really cool. It's basically the creative hub here in Tallahassee. And so I had been on the waiting list, and like the same week that I figured out that I needed to move out of bedroom, a spot opened up here for me. And so the retail space was really just because I moved into this store. They would have been fine if it was just a workshop, but because I moved into the space that I moved into, with the amount of foot traffic that comes by every weekend and stuff, it only made sense to have a retail component. And so it's not like I set out to specifically have a retail store, but it just kind of organically worked out that way. And that was super helpful when growing the business, of course, because online traffic obviously is great, but having people walk by your store every day is also a really good, for the local market, it's nice to have that kind of foot traffic.
Do you think that the retail helped you grow more, or the online side? What do you think kind of got you to the point you're at? Do you think it was the consistency of retail, or, the foot traffic, or online, people just discovering your page through social media? What do you think has been your biggest driver?
Yeah, it's changed over the years. So when we first opened, foot traffic was the biggest thing. I'm admittedly not the best at social media. Now, I think I would say January was the first month that we had more sales online than in store. And we're slowly trending that way. So now I think every month since January, we've been kind of trending. And, my goal right now is to grow the online store and really focus on that more. So for a couple of reasons. Number one, custom, as you know, takes a long time.
Yeah.
In-store people almost always, if they're buying custom jeans or a jacket, they almost always want it customized.
Yeah.
Which is great. And we'll always offer that service, but it's really difficult to do that at scale. And so now we're trying to scale a little bit and sell
It's a
standard
time
sizing. Yeah. There's only so much time in the day. And, a custom pair takes about twice as long as a regular pair. And so it's just a matter of how do you maximize what you can do in a day. So we're really focusing on that, but I plan to have a retail store for as long as I can. And it's been great. It's the thing that got us started, so I can't say enough about it. The one thing that I would say is don't jump right into a retail store right off the bat like I did, because there are some obvious challenges with that. Definitely grow your following, even if it's just like local, build a local online following. And then go from there.
Yeah. So that's good advice. That's big too, because I think a lot of makers, it's very easy to go down the rabbit hole, especially when you're new, of doing custom things for customers, because you just want to have customers. You want to attract customers.
Yeah.
But then the problem is once you offer that, it's expected for the duration they're a customer, because they're going to say, oh, well, I've been getting my stuff here for years and you've always offered this. And it's almost like it's a gift and a curse. You get early customers, and you most likely your pricing is probably low to start. Most people it is, because you don't want to seem overzealous and you don't want people to think you're overcharging for your market. They think that it's not worth it. So do you find that there's a lot of people that continuously come back and they want custom things, and it makes it hard because you, at the end of the day, like we said, you are a one-man person. There's only so many hours in the day that you can make jeans and still actually eat and sleep.
Yeah. It's definitely, it's been a struggle, like, to kind of keep both going in terms of retail and online. And also there's a constant struggle in my head between like, okay, are we a leather goods brand? Are we a a clothing brand. And one side or the other has, over the years, it's shifted back and forth. We started as a jean brand, then kind of shifted, especially during the pandemic. We were doing some like markets and stuff. Jeans don't really sell well at local markets. So we were kind of
Yeah.
focusing on small leather goods. And now we're kind of back where we're like firmly a clothing brand that also does some leather goods just to sort of fill out the retail space. But yeah, I definitely agree with you in terms of, pricing is a big thing, and really just learning to say no to things that are not within your wheelhouse was a very big issue for me at the beginning, where it's like, you need the money. So you want to take in everything you can, but there's always an opportunity cost, right? So if you're constantly busy doing everything else that is not with your brand or that doesn't
Yeah.
align with your brand, you don't have time to work on the brand. You don't have time to build, you know, new lines of products or to work on figuring out faster production or any of that stuff. So it's
Yeah.
definitely a constant struggle when you're getting started, and the struggles are not any less as you get established. It's just the struggles change, but owning your own business is not easy, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. No, it doesn't come without struggles and sacrifice. And I think that's the one thing I've learned from the people that I've developed friendships with over the years is that it's not easy or for the faint of heart that just want the 9 to 5, because it's never going
Yeah.
to be a nine
Yeah.
to five. And
Yep.
you may get to a point where at some point in your life, it may be a 9 to 5,
Yeah.
but odds are it's not going to be.
Yep.
It's never going to be something that's easy as just collecting a paycheck every week. There's going to be
Yeah. Yeah.
months that are great. There's going to be months that are terrible. There's going to be all these ups and downs. You
Yeah.
know, I think in terms of growth, I always like to ask people, and I find these questions to be kind of telling. It seems like what we think about in terms of us as a future, that in 5 years, where do you see you and the brand going?
So this answer would have been different like a year ago, a couple of years ago. Like I said, we've really shifted kind of back and forth between leather goods and apparel. But now we're sort of firmly planted in the apparel category. And yeah, so really just filling out the product line. We've got some shirts and shorts coming up for the summer. Got a couple of summer fabrics that we're releasing. And so, yeah, in 5 years, I want to have, one of my goals is to expand into women, jeans, jackets, all that stuff. So we'd really like to expand into a women's line, because right now we do custom in-store fittings for women, but we haven't really have the ability to develop like standard sized women's fits yet, just from a time perspective.
And that's probably difficult too. I'm sure
Yeah.
women's fits are much more complicated than men's fits. Men's fits are very basic.
Yeah. Men's fits, because, and this is changing a little bit now, but over the last 10, 15 years, kind of the high waisted skinny jeans have been in vogue. And so with a fit like that, if it doesn't fit exactly, it's very much noticeable.
Yeah.
Whereas a looser fit, you can be, if the leg is a quarter inch wider than what you want it to be, it doesn't have the same effect as if it's like skin tight on your body.
Yeah.
And so because women's fits are moving to the more kind of like traditional vintage Levi's style fits nowadays, and they have been for about 5 years, but that kind of opens up an opportunity for us to, because the other thing is we don't do a lot of stretch denim. And so when we're using 100% cotton rigid denim, traditionally women didn't like that
Yeah.
because you can't get the same fit. You can't get a skinny fit with 100% cotton. It's incredibly uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
But
Stiff.
as jeans are moving to a wider fit, you can now get more durable 100% cotton or slight stretch fabrics, And so, yeah, expanding into the women's line, kind of filling out the men's line in terms of shirts. more jeans offerings, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And really, I would love to open up a dedicated retail space where we can pull in, you and I have a lot of friends kind of in the leather industry, a lot of makers, and I would love to be able to have a retail space that houses our stuff, but also I can bring in and support other, both local small businesses and also, friends of mine to
Yeah.
bring in their products and kind of expand them. And so, we've been talking about for a while kind of where I think we want to stay in Florida because our family's here and
Yeah.
that sort of thing. But, kind of looking at places that we could open up just like an actual retail space, or maybe just expand into a bigger space that has retail up front and workshop in the back, but a little more separated than what we have right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of where we want to be in 5 years, is just growing and expanding. And
Well, where's Dan the man in 5 years? Or is he one in the same?
a little bit one and the same. Yeah. I mean, my goals personally would just be, you know, having well-rounded kids and having a little bit more time to spend with the family. I work a lot of late nights and stuff like that. And my wife is super supportive of the business and stuff. One of our personal goals is for the business to make enough money that she can quit her job and come work, full time on the business. That's kind of, as a family, that's sort of our goal. And the real reason that we want to do that is just the time, right? So we
Yeah.
can, on a random Tuesday, if we want to say, hey, let's get the kids out of school early and go get ice cream and watch a movie or whatever, you can't do it every week, but just being able to kind of build our own schedule and also work collaboratively. We'd like to work together on building a business and, building something that we're proud of. So
I think the real thing there is if she spends too much time with you, she's going to realize she made a mistake. If she
yeah,
spends too
yeah,
much
that's
time,
true.
she's
That's
going to be like, "What was I thinking?"
we will definitely have to have established separate roles in the business so that we work really well together, but collaboratively, not if we're both working on the same thing. Like if I'm working on dishes and she's working on like cleaning up the living room, it's perfect. We work great together in those terms. But if we're both trying to do something, if we're both trying to do dishes, it's like one of us has to, you know,
Get out of the way.
one of us has to go do something else. But no, she's great. She's been super supportive. There's absolutely no way that I could have gotten to this point without her. So
Oh, that's amazing. And you mentioned you're in Tallahassee. Where can everybody find you in person and, on the World Wide Web?
yeah, so in person, we're in the Railroad Square Arts District in Tallahassee. It's right between Florida State University and Florida A&M. And so we've got two giant colleges, literally 2 blocks north and 2 blocks south of us. We're kind of close to downtown. I can see the Capitol building from peering out my front door. Yeah, so you can find us there. And online, we're at SkinnerAmericanGoods.com or at Skinner American Goods on social media platforms, Instagram, we're on Facebook. We have a TikTok account. We haven't posted anything, but that's another thing that I really want to work on this year is kind of more content, getting away from having to do production day in, day out and really focus on, because there's a lot of cool stories to tell about these machines and stuff like that. So and the processes behind making some jeans. So I'd really like to expand on that. So maybe by the time this comes out, we'll have gotten around to making some TikTok content.
I like it. It should just be a day in the life of you running in circles.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I tell people all the time that I'm a firefighter. Like, what do you do? I just put out fires all day.
Yeah.
Website goes down, I got to fix that.
Yeah.
Machine's not working, got to fix that. But
Customer
that's being a
comes in, you
business
got to
owner.
help them. I like it.
Yeah,
Well,
it's all
hey,
part of being a business owner.
I appreciate you hopping on. This has been really fun. And I hope people learn something about, denim, canvas, leather, and all the fun machines that we continuously geek out on. So I appreciate you hopping on. And anybody listening, you can find us at leathershoppod.com. and at Leather Shop on Instagram and TikTok. So appreciate it, Dan, and we'll catch you guys next month.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.